चिड़िया उड़, आयरन मैन उड़, ट्रक उड़, ओ नहीं, बफेलो उड़, एयर इंडिया उड़.
एयर इंडिया तो लॉस मेकिंग कंपनी है
यार, you're right, Air India loss making company है, but something has changed, and that change is the Tatas. The Tatas have taken over Air India and see that they're investing a lot of money into this business. But think about it. Globally, the entire airline industry has failed. It doesn't make money anywhere, barring maybe say a few airlines like say Southwest, etc. The industry just doesn't seem to make sustainable cash. I mean, think about it in India. We had Kingfisher, King of Good Times. That failed. We had MDLR, we had Air Deccan, we even had Jet Airways. We've traveled here, but we know, yaar, paisa to nahi banta hai. So why is Tata, who has the best minds in the country, investing so much money in a sector that does not make money? Well, in this video, we'll find out what the history is of the entire sector and what the future holds for Air India. The story of Air India actually goes all the way back to J.R.D. Tata. So, J.R.D. Tata was the father of the Indian aviation industry and actually was one of the first pilots in the country as well. He was the only industrialist, at least, who had that license in 1929. Shortly thereafter, around 1932, Tata Airlines was launched. And Tata Airlines was one of the only commercial airlines in the country. And they ran for a good 20 years. But then when independence happened, the government basically wanted to nationalize everything. Basically, the government wanted control so that it could define the direction of the economy. Basically, the government took over Tata Airlines and Air India was born. And then we know what happened. As the story unfolded, the government focused more on what the industry needed versus the efficiency of a business. Now, at least in India, when the government owns something, it is generally not perceived to be very highly efficient. And in this case, it was no different. They were mounting losses, there was debt problems. I'm sure we've always heard of one friend who was saying, "Yaar, Air India phir late ho gayi yaar." Until last year, that was the case. The government ran it, but Air India Express was now bought by the Tatas. Their long-lost baby was now back home by paying 2.5 or 2.4 billion US dollars. And a lot has happened in just a year. So 1 year is actually, think about it, just 4 quarters. Not much can happen in that time. But a lot did happen in the last 1 year. The first thing they did, they appointed aviation veteran Campbell Wilson as the CEO. If you notice, Tata always does this. A bunch of companies that have done well, they build around the CEO. So you have Xerxes and around Titan, you have TCS, etc. So it's possible that they can do this time as well around this one veteran. And this guy has decades of experience. And then there was a merger between Air India and Vistara. There's also plans to merge between Air Asia and this entity. If that happens, that'll make Air India the largest carrier domestically and which goes internationally in the country. We can also see that the increase in total operating aircrafts and average daily and weekly international flights has gone up. 63, 30 and 27%. These are increases. Finally, we can see improved revenue per mile. This is the definition of operational efficiency. You have fixed costs and the only way to actually suck out margin is to improve with what you existing have. And that's called efficiency. So one way to actually measure that is airline revenue per mile. ऐसे इंडिया में किलोमीटर होता है, but ठीक है, that's the standard way of measuring. It's gone from 4.5 rupees to 6.5 rupees, which is actually a really large difference in terms of percentage and makes a huge difference to the bottom line. Finally, we can see that there was a record revenue of 3,100 crores in December, and this has been the highest ever. So clearly, all of this doesn't seem like it happened by chance. Something was done inside the strategy room of this company, which changed some of these things. And finally, they are spending $400 million to improve the interiors. So not only operationally, I guess the experience is also something that the Tatas think should be improved. So to summarize what Tatas are bringing to Air India is simple. One is that they have a war chest. पैसा है, they can spend on acquisitions, improvements, acquiring new fleet, etc., etc. Second is talent. They really believe in having smart people run the show. That's where the operational efficiency, growth, etc. comes from. And they pave a very long way of that growth. It's not a 1-2 year plan. They look really far into the future. And finally, the Tata Group as a whole, if you bring together, then other things can actually happen. So TCS can provide software, and other companies can provide other things, increasing their margin and possibly reducing their cost for Air India. So these three things make it a power pack of what could happen. We'll talk about this towards the end a little more, but next I want to talk about the aviation sector in general. Let's understand that. The biggest death blow was obviously COVID. Now, kuch bhi ho jaye, when prices go up for say crude oil, etc., the airline companies can complain, prices can go up, but nothing comes to a standstill, right? That never happens unless maybe there's a war happening between two countries. So COVID was obviously something that no one really predicted, and everything went to total shit. Things weren't running at all, and there were obviously fixed costs to be paid. There were salaries which still have to go, whether or not the plane flies, whether or not Chidiya Ode happens or not, you still have to pay for the parking charges, etc., etc. So that would make things worse. Apart from that, if you look at the aviation industry generally, it looks very glamorous from the outside, right? Like, I remember as a child, I used to think, yaar, bade okay, I would be great to own and run my own airline. Wouldn't that be cool? It flies, people pay so much money. But the truth is, it's just not profitable. Think about this. Think about the high operating costs that I just mentioned. Think about rising competition with all these other people who own it. They all have money, right? They can push ad dollars, they can do a bunch of things to outcompete you. You also have fluctuation in fuel prices. Just go to Google and type crude oil and see the prices. It's even gone a negative at some point. But someone has to manage all of that as well. Then there's what? Just really bad government policies that you also have to deal with. And finally, there's just penetration. When you say India is a land of 1 billion people, bhai, sab log nahi Chidiya Ode khelenge. People just don't prefer flying, right? Because it's too expensive. People prefer, say, a bus or car or maybe even railways. Anyway, let's look at the fleet size of India. हम serve भी कर सकते हैं क्या 1 billion people को कि नहीं? So on one side, you have India's entire fleet, which over here says 716 aircrafts. On the other hand, you have America. You know what? Let's not pick the entire America. Let's pick only one company, which is an American airline, their national carrier. What is it called? Oh, American Airlines. They are 994. So American Airlines has more planes than the entire India's aircraft industry fleet combined. So clearly, our fleet should be maybe 10x of what it is right now, but clearly there are not enough people who want to go there, which is why perhaps we don't have a very large fleet. So what I'm saying is, हमारा fleet size बहुत छोटा है. Next over here I can see, and this was really surprising, okay? 1% of all people in India take 45% of flights. That means the rest of them aren't even flying. So India तो बहुत nascent है. Maybe 30-40 years from now, things will be very different. But even today, flying is not normal. And if you know many people who fly, dude, you're in the 1%. And I would want you to maybe say thank you, because 1% doesn't mean you're driving a Bugatti. It means you have the privilege of flying once in your lifetime. So please comment right now. I'm the 1%. Thank you, Mummy, Papa. Because all of us in this country don't have the privilege of doing that. Finally, over here, I can see sky-high debt levels. And I'm sure you heard this. Sari companies mein karja bahut sara tha, which means they had a lot of loan. Now, the reason is not the loan. The reason is it's not a high cash flow profitable business, right? Think about Colgate or Hindustan Unilever or Marico, for example. They are able to generate free cash flow, which is money, and they're able to invest that money to grow further. A business is not generating money at all, like say these airline companies. It has to fund that expansion somehow, right? So how will that happen? It happens through a loan, which means they have massive amounts of loans. And I'm not talking about a few tens of crores rupees. Over here, I can see Kingfisher. It had 7,000 crores of debt, which it was unable to repay, and it went into bankruptcy. Then we have Jet Airways. It boasted 44% market share. I remember this time, dude. Everyone was flying Jet Airways. They also were forced into bankruptcy because they did not have enough money. And finally, Air India. Can you guess how much debt this company has? Wait for it. It's 61,500 crores. That's a lot, man. And Tata's acquisition has actually transferred all that debt on Tata's books now. So they have to take care of that debt as well. So they damn well have to make money to repay that or do something amazing, because 61,000 crores is a lot of money. They've paid 15,000 crore rupees. We have Vistara, which has actually never made a profit. In fact, there was this one story where they made a profit in a quarter, but it was still a very small number. Then you have 9-year-old Air Asia. Globally, I think they post some kind of profit. Not recently though, but India definitely doesn't still make any money. So if no one's making money, then why do we have a bet on Air India? The first bet that Air India is taking is that they'll bring all these 4 brands under one umbrella, which is Air India, Vistara, Air Asia, and Air India Express. Now, I don't know whether it'll be one single brand, because there is a town hall that's going to happen in the future where they'll announce it. But I'm guessing if I had to choose between Air India and Vistara, I mean, I'll choose Vistara, I think. But who knows whether they'll continue as separate brands or not. But they will be the same legal entity, that's for sure. The advantages that I told you earlier. So the first is a war chest. Second is experience management. And third is just general, the Tata group can bring. So TCS can bring software, and maybe Indian Hotels, which is the Taj group, can bring in the hotel network that is needed to house the staff. These things will actually bring, again, I've said this word many times, operational efficiency, which means margin increases, and hopefully cost decreases a little bit, where you get that extra margin. So far we've talked about all the bad stuff about this, and it's not that we are negative about it. Okay, we are, okay, it's a very bad sector. But there's some positives as well. So let's talk about that. The first is infrastructure. So we talked about that we don't have enough, the fleet size is not large enough, etc. But you also need airports, right? So I was talking to Vikas in the office, and he said, dude, people in Haryana, for example, will have to go all the way to Delhi to actually take a flight. That's very cumbersome. Koi jayega nahi itna dur just to take a flight, right? I'd rather just take a train. And that totally made sense until we found this. There are roughly about 131 operational airports in the country. And about 110 airports will be operational in 2024. Matlab, in another year and a half, the number of airports in the country will almost double. So the network suddenly has created, and you'll see that in 2024. This is actually a very, very good thing. And you can see all the list of airports being constructed here. The second thing is India's per capita income. Now, this is important because everyone can't travel in an airline because it's expensive relative to other modes of transport. Mile by mile also, kilometer by kilometer also, it's cheaper if you take a train. So people with a preference for convenience and time will only go for aircrafts. So people's purchasing power also has to increase. Now, I can't go to every house and bhaiya kitna kamate ho. So we look at per capita income. And generally speaking, it is within economists, we say above $2,500 a year, people can start spending or splurging on other things that they like, of convenience. And we've seen this happen in the US and other places as well. So it seems like if we cross $2,500, something will change in the country. And we are very close. We're 2,200 right now. So it seems like we'll cross that very soon and purchasing power will increase. What's interesting is when this 2,500 becomes a 5,000 or a 7,000 over X number of years, that's when the airline industry will completely change. And so will consumption throughout the country. That 1% of India traveling might become 3, 4, 5, maybe even 7%. And that's when the entire industry will change forever. But until then, we know in the short term, more people will travel because the per capita income is increasing in the next 5 years. But I think what the Tatas are really betting on is that in the next 15 years or so, the per capita income will go up so much that they would have monopolized, and I mean this in a good way, the business so much that everyone will be traveling using a ticket that is owned by the Tatas. And that's where the profits are. I still think it's a long shot. I'd love to know what you think and put it in the comments below and we can discuss that. And we'll talk about international airline losses. So all these companies you see over here, from Qatar all the way to American Airlines, have consistently posted losses. Now, sometimes they do make a profit, yes, but the consistency with which the profit comes doesn't exist. So if these guys couldn't do it, why do you think the Tatas can? I don't know. then we can see why this actually happens. Look at this pie chart. You see that? That's fuel. This is, you can't travel with less fuel, right? जो fuel है वो है. And it's what, 30% over here. The lease costs. There is DNA and salary. Now think about it. Let's say I want to reduce costs. Can I really cut corners in salary? It's very tough, right? Because the people running it have to be paid. So what head can you reduce over here to make expenses less so that the profit can be produced? So I'd love to know. I don't see any. If you can see something, please, put it in the comments. I'd love to know what you think. And finally, we have occupancy rates. Occupancy rates is simple. We use this in hotels as well. Hotels have number of rooms, and the number of people who occupy that room, you can take out a percentage. So अगर 10 room है, 5 occupied है, तो 50% occupancy. You can take an average of this. The same logic applies to airlines as well, because you have seats, and you want those seats ideally to be completely full. And we can see here that it's 70-75%. So if you have an entire aircraft, your entire crew, fixed cost same hai, and you're not able to get to say a 90% occupancy rate, you'll never make a profit, right? So the prices will still be higher for the user, and it just doesn't make sense. Like 90% kyun nahi hai? More people aren't flying, so that's a problem. Anyway, I'm sure there's a lot other things that maybe the Tata Group knows that we don't, but I hope you found this story interesting. I certainly learned a lot, and the entire crew over here spent a lot of time debating and finding the research that is required to tell you the story. If you found this interesting, please say something nice to the entire crew in the comment box. It really, really makes our day. And if you want us to do more business stories like this, please let us know that as well. We will continue doing this. I hope you found this interesting. You see that bell icon? You see it, right? Click on it. You see that subscribe button? Click on it. And see you in the next video.